The grand ballroom was a vision of crystal and gold, alive with laughter and the clink of glasses. Sophia Reynolds moved gracefully through the crowd, her hand resting lightly on Mark Carter's arm. A brilliant diamond sparkled on her finger, the promise of a future she had long dreamed of. But all dreams are fragile. A sharp voice cut through the music. Sophia turned to see her mother, Margaret Reynolds, striding towards her, her expression as cold as winter. The room fell silent as Margaret's words rang out. "This engagement is over. The Carter family are criminals." A murmur rose among the guests. Shocked faces turned towards Mark, whose smile froze. His parents stood stiffly, their pride crumbling under the weight of disgrace. Sophia's heart pounded in her chest. Richard Reynolds, Sophia's father, added in a tone of finality, "We will not let our daughter marry into a family of thieves." Sophia's world spun. She stared at Mark, searching his eyes for denial, for any sign this could be a mistake. But Mark said nothing, standing rooted in shame. Margaret continued, her voice razor-sharp. "You have been protected, Sophia. You should be grateful." Sophia's hand trembled as she removed the engagement ring and let it fall to the marble floor. It clattered loudly, a sharp, painful note in the silent room. Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving everything behind. Alone in her room, the night stretched endlessly. Sophia sat by the window, the moonlight soft on her face. Her tears had dried, leaving only a burning resolve. She would not be shamed into obedience. If they believed Mark was unworthy, she would prove otherwise. Not with explanations. Not with begging. But with a wedding that no one would dare to forget. A wedding that would change everything. The waves crashed against the cliffs far below, sending cool mist into the air. Sophia stood at the edge, her hair whipping in the wind, her mind racing faster than her heart. Mark had not called. Not once. Perhaps he was too ashamed. Or perhaps he had given up. But Sophia would not. Late into the night, she contacted Olivia, her childhood friend, the only person she trusted outside her rigid family. "I need to get away," Sophia whispered, urgency heavy in her voice. "I need to find a place where no one will find us." Olivia hesitated, then smiled wickedly. "I know just the place. An island. Private. Untouched. An island." The idea flared like a beacon in Sophia's mind. Plans were made in hurried, secretive messages. No one could know. Especially not her parents. Every detail was arranged carefully. A hidden venue, a small crew loyal only to her, a wedding dress smuggled under false names. It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was perfect. 3 days later, Sophia stood in a dusty private hangar, a simple white dress packed tightly in her bag. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she boarded the small plane waiting for her. "Where are we going?" asked the pilot, a quiet man Olivia had hired. "Paradise," Sophia replied, her voice steady. The plane lifted into the clouds, leaving behind the city lights and the heavy chains of her old life. Far below, unnoticed, a sleek black car idled at the edge of the airport fence. Inside, Richard Reynolds watched the plane vanish into the night, his jaw tight with fury. "You will not disgrace this family," he muttered. As the sky darkened, Sophia stared out of the window, unaware of the storm her escape was about to unleash. And somewhere, Mark Carter made a choice that would change everything. The island was a hidden jewel, wrapped in dense forests and golden beaches. From the moment Sophia stepped off the boat, she felt a strange mix of peace and urgency. The small villa Olivia had arranged was perched above a cliff, overlooking the endless blue. It was simple but beautiful. Fresh flowers lined the entrance, and the soft scent of salt filled the air. Mark arrived just after sunset. He wore a dark shirt and jeans, his face tense but his eyes lit with something fierce when he saw her. Sophia ran into his arms without hesitation. For a moment, the world outside no longer existed. "We have to be quick," Mark said, pulling back slightly. "They will look for you." "I know," Sophia replied, her voice trembling. "But I couldn't stay. Not after what I found out." Mark's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Sophia took a deep breath. "My family. They are criminals, Mark. My father, my brothers. They've built everything from dirty money, threats and blood." Mark staggered back, the words hitting him like cold water. "That's why they tried to control me," Sophia continued, her voice breaking. They needed me to marry into another corrupt family. To keep their empire alive. Mark ran a hand through his hair. This is bigger than just us. Sophia nodded. That's why we need to disappear. Together. For a few precious hours they planned. New identities. New lives. Far from the poison that tainted their bloodlines. But paradise was not theirs to claim so easily. Late that night, while Sophia slept in Mark's arms, a shadow moved silently through the trees. A glint of steel flashed under the moonlight. Richard Reynolds had not come alone. And he would stop at nothing. The first crack of a twig snapped Sophia awake. In the darkness, her instincts screamed. She shook Mark gently, whispering with urgency, "Someone's here." Mark was already reaching for the small knife hidden under his pillow. His eyes were cold and sharp. Without speaking, he motioned for Sophia to stay low. Footsteps circled the villa, slow and deliberate. A shadow moved past the window. Then another. They were surrounded. Mark crept towards the door. He gestured to Sophia to take the back exit. She nodded, heart pounding so loud she could barely hear anything else. As Mark flung the front door open with a loud crash, Sophia slipped out the back, barefoot and breathless. The humid night air wrapped around her as she sprinted through the trees, branches clawing at her skin. She heard Mark shout, a violent scuffle breaking out behind her. But she couldn't turn back. Tears blurred her vision. She stumbled down a rocky slope and landed hard. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Pain shot up her ankle, but fear pushed her forward. Somewhere behind her, heavy boots crashed through the undergrowth. They were gaining. Sophia spotted a narrow footpath leading down to the beach. Without hesitation, she ran for it. Her lungs burned, and blood trickled down her shin, but she refused to stop. As she reached the sand, a hand grabbed her shoulder violently. She screamed, struggling, but the grip tightened. "Let go of me!" she cried, fighting with every ounce of strength she had. A familiar voice hissed in her ear. "You belong to us, Sophia. You always have." It was Thomas, her eldest brother. Sophia's blood ran cold. Before she could react, a second figure tackled Thomas from behind. "Mark!" They crashed into the sand, fists flying. Thomas fought viciously, but Mark fought with something stronger. Desperation. Sophia stumbled back, eyes wide in horror. This was only the beginning. Somewhere beyond the island shores, the real war awaited them. And not everyone would survive it. The night grew heavier around them. Mark, panting and bloodied, pinned Thomas against the sand. For a moment, there was only the sound of crashing waves and labored breathing. "You think you can save her?" Thomas spat, blood staining his teeth. "You don't even know what you're up against." Mark's hand tightened around Thomas's collar. "I know enough. And I know you're finished." A flash of movement to Mark's right made him turn. Another figure rushed from the shadows, tackling him off Thomas with brutal force. Mark crashed into the sand. The air knocked from his lungs. Thomas scrambled to his feet, grinning darkly. Sophia backed away slowly, her mind spinning. She was trapped between the ocean and her family. The family that once claimed to love her, but now saw her as a possession. "Come home, Sophia," Thomas called, voice oily with false warmth. "This is your last chance." Sophia looked at Mark, struggling to rise, and then at the boat bobbing in the distance beyond the rocks. Freedom. It was there. But how? Thomas stepped closer, hands outstretched as if offering a hug. "You'll be safe. Just like before. Before. Before when she was treated like a trophy. Before when every smile masked betrayal." Sophia's jaw tightened. She stepped forward, surprising everyone, even herself. "I'll come with you," she said quietly. Thomas exchanged a triumphant glance with his men. "But," Sophia continued, her voice sharp as a blade, "Mark comes with me. As my husband." The smirk slipped from Thomas's face. "You have no right to bargain." "I have every right," she snapped. "Or you'll lose me forever." The gang hesitated, murmuring among themselves. They needed her. That much was clear. Thomas cursed under his breath. "Fine," he growled. "But if he steps out of line, he dies." Sophia nodded, hiding her shaking hands. She had bought them time. Nothing more. As Thomas's men grabbed Mark roughly and shoved him forward, Sophia whispered to him under her breath, "Trust me. This isn't over." And in the dead of night, surrounded by enemies, Sophia plotted their escape. It was only just beginning. The house loomed before them like a beast in the night. Once a sanctuary, now it stood as a prison cloaked in luxury. Sophia felt the weight of the past as she crossed the marble threshold, Mark's wrist gripped tightly by one of Thomas's men. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of old money and fresh danger. Family portraits lined the walls, cold, smiling faces that now seemed more like warnings than memories. Sophia's heart thudded painfully against her ribs. She needed to stay calm. Every move mattered now. Thomas led the way through the labyrinthine corridors, never once looking back. He was confident. He thought he had won. He could not be more wrong. They reached the great hall, where a fire crackled beneath an enormous chandelier. Several of Thomas's men flanked the walls, their eyes never leaving Sophia and Mark. "Welcome home," Thomas sneered, gesturing grandly. Sophia said nothing. She clutched Mark's hand tightly, feeling his silent strength. Tonight they would pretend. Tomorrow they would escape. But even as she plotted, a new threat emerged. From a side door, a woman entered, tall, elegant, her sharp green eyes missing nothing. Aunt Veronica. Sophia froze for a fraction of a second. Veronica was the real power behind the family. Ruthless, cunning, and without an ounce of mercy. "Sophia," Veronica purred. "You look radiant. Marriage suits you." Mark stiffened beside her. Veronica circled them like a cat, her heels tapping ominously on the marble floor. "And you must be the brave boy who thought he could steal our jewel," she said, flashing a smile that never reached her eyes. Mark held her gaze without flinching. "We belong together," he said simply. Veronica laughed, a rich, chilling sound. "How touching. Truly." Sophia gritted her teeth. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she couldn't. Not yet. Veronica's hand grazed Mark's jaw lightly. "You have spirit," she murmured. "I like that." Sophia stepped between them. "We're tired. We need to rest," she said sharply. Veronica's smile deepened. "Of course. Tomorrow, we'll have a little celebration." The word dripped with venom. Sophia bowed her head slightly, hiding her fury. Tonight, they survived. Tomorrow they fought. And somewhere deep within the gilded walls of this house, secrets lay waiting. Secrets that could either destroy them or set them free. Sophia tightened her grip on Mark's hand. They had come too far to lose now. The night pressed against the windows like a living thing. Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, the heavy curtains drawn tight. Mark stood by the door, listening for any sound beyond their room. The entire house seemed to breathe with silent menace. Sophia clutched the silver locket around her neck, a forgotten gift from her mother, feeling its worn edges against her fingers. And then it struck her. The locket. It had always been more than just a trinket. She opened it carefully and found, for the first time, a tiny key tucked inside. Her heart raced. "Mark," she whispered. "Look." Mark knelt beside her, his face tense. "A key," he murmured. "But to what?" Sophia's mind raced through memories of the house. The hidden doors, the forbidden rooms, the strange stories whispered by the old maids. "There's a passage," she said. "Somewhere in the library." It was a long shot. But it was their only hope. They moved quietly, slipping into the dark corridors like ghosts. Every creak of the wooden floor sounded like a gunshot in the heavy silence. When they reached the library, the scent of leather and dust enveloped them. Rows upon rows of ancient books lined the walls, their spines worn from centuries of secrets. Sophia ran her fingers along the shelves, searching desperately. Then she found it, a small keyhole, nearly invisible, behind a row of heavy encyclopedias. Her hands trembled as she inserted the tiny key. Click. The sound was deafening in the silence. A narrow panel slid open, revealing a spiraling staircase descending into darkness. Mark hesitated only a second before taking Sophia's hand. "We go together," he said firmly. Sophia nodded, heart hammering. They plunged into the darkness. The staircase twisted endlessly downward, the air growing colder with each step. Their only light was a faint glimmer from the opening above. When they finally reached the bottom, They found themselves in a stone corridor, the walls damp and close. There, etched into the stone, was a map. A map of the entire estate. Sophia traced the lines with her fingers, realizing that the passages stretched under the whole house, connecting rooms, gardens, and even the outer gates. Hope flared in her chest. This was their way out. But before they could move, a voice rang out from the darkness. Going somewhere. Sophia spun around. Veronica stood there, a pistol in her hand, her face bathed in cold amusement. You didn't really think you could leave, did you? Mark stepped protectively in front of Sophia. Sophia's mind raced. There had to be a way. There had to be. The cold steel of Veronica's pistol glinted in the faint light. Sophia's mind raced. She had no weapon, no plan, just a burning will to survive. You don't understand, Sophia said, her voice low and even. Your family's crimes will be exposed. Veronica laughed softly, almost with pity. You think anyone will believe you? She sneered. You're nothing. Just another foolish girl chasing ghosts. Mark stepped forward, keeping himself between the gun and Sophia. You're wrong, he said quietly. We're not alone. From the shadows behind Veronica, a sudden noise shattered the tense silence. A figure emerged, the old caretaker, Mr. Hawthorne. In his hand gleamed an old hunting rifle. Drop it, Veronica, he growled. For the first time, fear flashed across Veronica's face. You old fool, she spat, swinging the pistol towards him. But Mark was faster. In one swift movement, he tackled Veronica to the ground, the pistol clattering away across the stones. Sophia darted forward and grabbed the weapon, pointing it at Veronica, who lay struggling beneath Mark's grip. Enough, Sophia said, her voice trembling but firm. Veronica froze, eyes blazing with hatred. Mr. Hawthorne bound her wrists with a length of rope he pulled from his belt. You two need to get out, he said urgently. Now, before the others come. Sophia and Mark nodded. Guided by the map carved into the stone wall, they hurried down a narrow tunnel that led beyond the estate. The passage was long and winding, but freedom lay at its end. At last, they emerged into the night air. The cool wind brushed against Sophia's face, bringing with it the sweet scent of freedom. Behind them, the old house loomed like a dying beast, its windows dark and silent. They didn't look back. Mark squeezed Sophia's hand. We made it, he whispered. But Sophia knew this was only the beginning. There would be trials, battles, and a long road to justice. But they had survived the nightmare. And together, they would bring the truth into the light. The darkness behind them could no longer hold its secrets. The reckoning had begun.